Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I hope you're all keeping well and safe in these unprecedented times. Thank you very much for joining us today for this virtual launch event of the Global Industry Standard on Tailings Management. My name is Antonia Mikhailova from the Global Tailings Review, and I'll be moderating today's event. I'm absolutely honored to welcome our panelists today. The chair of the Global Tailings Review, Dr. Bruno Oberle, the Director of the Economy Division at the United Nations Environment Programme, Ligia Noronha. Representing the Principles for Responsible Investment, we have the Director of Ethics and Engagement of the Church of England Pensions Board, Adam Matthews, as well as the Secretary General of the Council on Ethics of the Swedish National Pension Fund, John Houchen. And last but not least, the Chief Executive of the International Council on Mining and Metals, Tom Butler. I am delighted to share that we will also be joined by a guest speaker today, Angelica Amanda Andrade, who is a community representative from Brumadinho. We are so grateful to have you join us today, Angelica. Thank you. Over the next 90 minutes, you'll hear from our guest speaker, Angelica, who will help us further understand the gravity of the issue at hand. You will then hear from our panelists, who will provide an overview of the standard and how it will be implemented. We will then open the floor to questions from you, our audience. To submit a question, please use the Q&A function on the bottom of your screens. We're very pleased to be joined by so many of you. We have more than 2,000 people on the call today, and we will endeavor to respond to as many questions as possible in the available time. So with this, I would like to leave you in the hands of the chair of the Global Tailings Review, Dr. Bruno Oberle, for his introductory remarks. Bruno, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Antonia. And from my side to good morning, afternoon, and evening to ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Let's start as remembering the tragedy that 1 year and 6 months ago in Brumadinho costed the life of 272 people, workers, members of the communities around. Mining is a dangerous activity. It was 10 years ago today that the world's attention was on 33 Chilean miners who became trapped underground at the San Jose mine in Chile. The successful rescue we watched 79 days later was a collaborative and international effort by mining industry, Chilean government and others. But let's remember also that 6 years and 1 day ago in Montpellier, a failure caused the release of a big amount of slurries into the environment around that disturbed the environmental severely. In the course of 2019, we had a dozen of bigger accidents related with tailings dams. God thanks, that was not every time casualties, but in any case, there were impact on environment, impact on infrastructures, impact on the economy around. Failures of tailings dam are not accidents. It is not bad luck. Failures are a systemic phenomenon. And societies, investors, states are less and less ready to accept these events happening. We need, and we will need in future, even more natural resources. And therefore, the only way forward for the mining industry is to become safe, fair, and sustainable. After the tragedy in Brumadinho, it was clear to the mining sector that a step change was needed. The Valley and the other companies organized that work together in the ICMM decided to create a global standard for the safe management of tailings. And it is very remarkable that they decided to partner in this endeavor together with UNEP and PRI. UNIP representing, let's say, the political space, state, communities, and PRI representing investors that are looking for good investments. This new multi-stakeholder approach align very good with the SDG 17, strengthen global partnerships, and has shaped all the process that has led us here. First, a multidisciplinary group of experts has worked on the standard that had itself a broad approach, and as we will see later on. On the other side, a multi-stakeholder advisory group made sure that the experts and the process don't forget about the different point of view that refers to the construction of the standard. We conducted a broad and intensive public consultation with the first draft of the standard. We consulted over the net, and we consulted in public, in person, with local community, with government representative, with investors, multilateral organization, and mining industry stakeholders. Even the implementation and use of the standard will be shaped by the co-convener with different instruments and with mutual reinforcing approaches, and we will listen in a moment. Let me also remember that the global industry standard on tailing management is accompanied by two other volumes. The first one is a report on the consultation process that transparently present the question that the consultee were asked, as well as the answers that they have given. On the other side, we have an accompanying report that highlights a list of important issues to have in mind thinking at tailings management and using the standard. Let me stop here for the moment. I will hand over back to the moderator. Antonia, up to you.
Thank you, Bruno. We will now turn to Angelica Amanda Andrade, who will share her first-hand experience of the tragedy in Brumadinho and what the new global industry standard on tailings management means to her and her community. Angelica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Antonia. Good morning, everyone. Good evening and good afternoon. I will start my speech today with one of the last pictures that I took with my sister Natalia and my other sister Karini, before my sister Natalia was killed on January 25th, 2019. We were very close, and she meant a lot to me. The next picture is one of our first pictures together when I was a newborn baby. In between these two pictures, there were so many of them. My parents are photographers. My grandfather was the first photographer in Brumadinho. So photographs have always meant so much in my family. Before they meant eternalizing our happy moments. As you can see, the smile in my parents' faces in the next picture that was taken in our last New Year's together before the rupture. The smile that I see in this picture, I don't see in my parents' faces anymore. Now, the pictures mean for us something that we will never have again. We will never have happy moments with Natalia again. It is so unfair to see my parents' tears now when they look at Natalia's pictures. My parents dedicated their whole lives to raising us, teaching us to be moral and honest people, to work hard to get what we want in life. And Natalia surely grew up to be that person. My parents did not deserve having to bury their own daughter and having to live with this pain for the rest of their lives. Natalia was a very hardworking person. She dedicated so much to Valley. She studied hard, she worked hard. You can see in the next picture a very happy moment for us when she graduated college. My parents didn't go to college. Natalia was one of the first to graduate, and it meant a lot. It's been now over a year and a half of the tragedy that killed my sister, and another 271 innocent people suffering elections of value to suit, along with government incompetence, must never happen again. The lives that were taken and the destruction that took place could have been avoided. The reason why this happened here in Brazil and not in Canada or Australia, for example, is that unfortunately my country has a lot of corruption. Companies thrive over this inefficiency and incompetence, and when the crimes are exposed, they get to control the whole process of reparation, doing what they wish to the victims, choosing their own punishment, and after doing the bare minimum, they get to go to society and to the international scenario. I spoke to the mayor of Brumadinho, who confirmed that after Vale made several commitments to the municipal government, they did not keep them. He gave examples of 3 affected communities, Parque da Cachoeira, Brumado, and Córrego do Feijão. In Parque da Cachoeira, Vale promised to bring asphalt and to build a medical clinic and concrete. Brumado is another community that lost 14 people. Vale promised to clean the river, but they haven't. And the most affected community is Córrego do Feijão, that is the closest one to the rupture. There were families that had lived there for their whole lives that are very attached to the land. But after the rupture, they lived through literal hell, seeing all the helicopters flying around, the firemen working, bodies being rescued, body fragments being rescued. So for these people, they took a long time to decide if they wanted to leave or to stay. And when they decided to leave, Vale told them that they had taken too much time and that now they wouldn't receive damages. The mayor also told me that after the rupture in the beginning, Vale cooperated a lot and was very open to help, but after a while, everything changed. And with the pandemic, everything has become worse as the attention focus shifted. Vale plans on stop paying the monthly tax to the municipality in October. And Vale also wants to stop the monthly payments to the citizens of Brumadinho, which is a minimum salary or half a minimum salary. They also decided which neighborhoods would get half or a full salary with no criteria. Vale is the criminal here, and they can't decide when they're done with Brumadinho or what to do with Brumadinho. We want to know what is the long-term recovery plan for Brumadinho. The mayor expects Vale to implement or help implement a new industrial district, since they will be no longer generating over 1,500 jobs or providing 5 million reais monthly. And this money is really important for the city. He also mentioned that Vale is able to get preliminary injunctions in a very shorter time than counties, confirming that they do have influence in the judiciary. The mayor also talked about the false reparation propaganda that Vale makes. And he told me that from the many works happening in town, just 9 of them are partnerships with Vale. I also spoke with Josiane Melo, who is the president of Avabrum. Avabrum is the association of family members and victims of the dam in Brumadinho. I'm also an affiliate of this association. The main goal is to fight for the rights of family members, to get justice for the crime and to get it in a fast manner. And that no one stays in the toxic mud. It's very important for us that all the families get the closure they deserve. I've known Josiane since I was a child. You can see in the next picture, my sister, Natalia, Josiane, and Josiane's sister. My sister Natalia is the first one at the front. Right behind her is Josiane, and Josiane's sister is next to her in pink. Josiane's sister was also killed in the tragedy. She was 5 months pregnant at the time, And Vale does not recognize her unborn niece as a victim of the crime, claiming that perhaps the pregnancy wouldn't be successful. This is just one of many of Vale's absurdities. Josiane also used to work for Vale before. She told me she used to believe that it was the safest place to be because Vale worked so hard to create a false image of security and transparency, and they always emphasized their motto of life coming first. She mentioned that there were some employees who had been there for decades that knew the risk, but Vale didn't believe them. And this is another reason why implementing the standard is so important. I ask now the CEOs and the people who are in decision-making positions in the mining companies to stop for a moment and try to imagine what it would be like to see the images of a break and know the person you love the most is there. Don't let it happen to anyone else. The standard has to be implemented. It cannot just be a document in a drawer. Effective change has to take place. It's your job to not let a tragedy happen again. I don't care how much it's going to cost to implement the standard. The money for it is there. According to Valor Invest, a Brazilian financial website, Vale's profit from April to June this year was 5.28 billion reais. You actually have to go beyond the standard. Be responsible for the lives that are indeed your responsibility. Treat each other with the same diligence you would treat yourself or your family. Don't come to the media and say your company is a precious gem because nothing is worth more than life. With COVID-19, we saw the whole world stop and governments ordering the shutdown of basically everything in order to save lives. The economic consequences of the paralyzation were left to be dealt with later. This is what is expected of you. Economic recovery is possible, life recovery isn't. Governments, it's your job to properly supervise and audit the mining companies. You are also responsible for ensuring the safety of your citizens inside the mines and making sure they go back home safely at the end of their shift, instead of returning in pieces in a body bag or not returning at all. Don't allow unreliable companies like Tufsu to certify the dams in your countries. And please understand the importance of the standard in not allowing the same certifier to certify a dam consecutively. Investors, please don't stand by and don't be persuaded as the large sums of money enter your account. Remember that this money is covered in the blood of innocent, hardworking people like my sister Natalia. Vale is going to start paying dividends again. Can you, with a clear consciousness, receive that money, knowing that the suffering victims of this brutal crime here have not nearly been repaired? Please don't invest in companies that refuse to implement the standard and make changes. And don't believe their false political discourse. Since last year, I have seen Vale spreading so many lies about the reality of Brumadinho, including saying that the river was already unusable before, when so many people used it for surviving and even for leisure, including my own father who used to fish there. I recently shared with Edwin Matthews and the PRI on my LinkedIn account the article where lawyers went to the media to expose that Vale is not keeping its end of the deal with the public prosecution, and many people who are entitled to receiving damages are being denied. They are bullies and they act like wolves in sheep's clothing. With so many dams in critical condition and at the verge of breaking, I urge the companies to be better prepared for the worst, to treat the people around these dams with dignity. Give them a voice and appropriate support. Josiane said that the first contact that Vale made with the families was last July through a meeting with the mayor, and it took Vale months to even apologize for what they had done. After allowing such atrocity to take place, after mutilating people, after not allowing people to say a proper goodbye and permanently destroying families, communities, and the environment, it's the least a company can do. It is time for the mining sector to stop being all about profit and act with humanity. It is time for the leading companies to stop acting like they are above anyone and anything, violating government laws and basic human principles. The implementation of the standard is the first step for a very much needed, safer and more responsible mining industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angelica. Your words are deeply moving, and we thank you very much for sharing your personal story and the thoughts of others. These and other community insights were front of mind for everyone involved in the global tailings review process, and they helped shape the standard. So with this, I will now hand back to the chair, Bruno Oberle, who will provide an overview of the global industry standard on tailings management. Bruno, back to you. You're on mute, Bruno.
Querida Angélica, sou grato a você por suas palavras comoventes. Ofereço a você e a sua comunidade minhas condolências e meu sincero abraço. Your word, Angelica, remember us that the final objective of the standard is to prevent this type of accident to happen, and to do this in discussion with the community. The communities are an important stakeholders, and this is reflected in the standard just at the beginning of the standard, dedicating the first topic area and the first principle to the relation with the communities. The standard is organized in 6 topic areas: affected communities, integrated knowledge base, public, design, construction, operation and monitoring, management and governance, emerging response and long-term recovery, as well as public disclosure and access to information. In each of these topic areas, one or more principles are describing the needed action from the operators. And each principle is composed by a list of concrete requirements that the operator is asked to comply with. As I have said, the first topic area, it is on affected communities, and it asks to respect human rights by conducting human rights due diligence to identify and address those rights most at risk. The operator shall provide opportunities for meaningful engagement of project-affected people in decisions that they may have a bearing on public safety and the integrity of the tailings facility. This topic area is contain only this principle with 4 different requirements. The second topic areas is covering the need to create an integrated knowledge base. To decide, the operator will need a sound base of information. Develop, maintain, and document knowledge about the social, environmental, and local economic context of a proposed or existing tailings facility. It becomes clear the standard is addressing existing and planned facilities. It is addressing in an integral way the different aspects that the operator have to have in mind: planning, managing, and closing the facility. It has to be aware about not only about the technical elements of the standard of the facility, but they have also to be informed continuously on the changes of environmental, socio-economical indicators around the facility. This topic area is composed by 2 different principles. The first one asks to develop and maintain the knowledge base, and the second one, it asks for use this knowledge base at different stage in the planning and management of the facility. We will come now to the third topic area. It is design, construction, operation, and monitoring. This, of course, is addressing the more technical element of the issue, of the topic. It is a longer chapter that contain 5 principles with a number of requirements. It asks to develop a robust design and to establish a reliable system for construction operation and monitoring. First, of course, on the basis of the knowledge base. And it asks to be able, ask the operator to be able to upgrade the facility in case that this will be needed in the course of the operations. We have taken an integrated approach here too. When we speak about designing, constructing, operating, monitoring, we are always thinking all the life cycle of the facility, from the very beginning and including the closing phase. Some in the consultation have demanded why we don't speak more clearly on the closing phase, and the reason it is all what we are saying in the standard refers also to the closing phase. Topic area 3, it is the first principle 4, it is develop plan and design criteria for the tailing facility to minimize risk at all phases of its life cycle, including closure and post-closure. The principle 5, it is asking for a robust design. Principle 6, it is demanding the operator to plan, build, and operate on the tailing facility to manage the risk at all phases, including the closure and post-closure. So this is more the building phase. Principle 7, it is asking to design, implement, and operate a monitoring system to manage the risk at all moments. Topic area 4 is addressing management and governance. This is the second most long chapter, and this is reflecting both the convincing, the evidence of fact that most of the accidents are related with errors in the management or with governance structure that are not performing right. We are asking the operators in this topic area. We are asking to assign clear responsibility and accountability to precise roles and precise function inside the company. We are asking to develop different types of check of the standard and of the management. We are asking to establish and implement different levels of review as part of as a strong quality and risk management system. And we are asking to develop a culture that promotes inside the organization learning, communication, and early problem recognition. Therefore, we are also asking the company to be ready to create a formal, confidential, and written process to receive the information of whistleblowers. Topic area 5 is dealing with the emergency response and the long-term recovery. We are asking the operators to be prepared for an emergence of the tailings failure and to be prepared for the recovery phase. We are asking the operator to work together with the communities in preparing these systems and in implementing this system. We are asking the operator to support the long-term recovery of communities and of the environment affected by a catastrophic tailing facility failure. And the last topic area 6, it is on the need to disclose and to guarantee public access to information. It is only one pretty long principle with a very long requirement 15.1 that lists all the information elements that we require the operators to disclose and to open to the public to be in line with the standard. Thank you very much. Antonia, over to you.
Thank you, Bruno. We will now turn to the co-conveners who will talk about their respective roles in implementing the standards. They will also share their thoughts on the process as well as the value of the new standard from the perspective of their own constituencies. So I'd like to start with UNEP, and I'll pass the floor to Lygia. However, I'm told that she has connectivity issues. So Lygia, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm going to put the on just because the connectivity is so poor. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being connected. And my apologies again for not being able to speak with the video. I would want to start by saying a huge thank you to Dr. Oberle and his team and the expert panel and the multi-stakeholder advisory board, all who have provided inputs and comments on this industry standard. This is very greatly appreciated. My special thanks to the co-conveners for believing that change is possible through joining forces towards increased responsibility in the industry. Why is UNEP in this process? UNEP responded in 2016 to a request from 30+ civil society organizations to help improve the safety around tailings management following several failures of tailings dams. We started the rapid response assessment of the problem in a report titled Mine Tailings Storage, Safety is No Accident. This is launched around the UNEA 3 in 2017. We followed up on this report with a roadmap for tailings management launched in December 2018. The Brumadinho tragedy, and you've just heard Angelica give us such a powerful narrative of what happened and the tragedy of it, made very clear to all of us that it was time to go beyond reports and exhortations and work directly and urgently with industry and finance to ensure increased safety through improved and responsible management and supported by governments and communities, so we have no more tragedies. With ICMM and PRI, and also coming to the same realization of the urgency of the moment, it led the three of us to co-convene a process that would support an independent global tailings review. Key to this engagement for UNEP was the pressure for change by the investors and the commitment of 30% of industry, the ICMM members, to implement the standard that would emerge from the process, as an industry standard is only as successful as its uptake by industry. The standard, which is the outcome of the review process, is for us an important milestone towards ambition of zero harm to people and the environment from tailings facilities. And as I said before, improved responsibility from the industry. UNEP believes that the standard raises the bar when compared with existing industry guidelines, laws, and regulations on this subject. Although many of the requirements of the standard are well reflected in the laws and regulations of some jurisdictions, the ambitions of the standard set a higher threshold for achieving the degree of integrity, safety, environmental, and community protection necessary for the sustainable development and management of tailings facilities. It provides a robust framework to significantly raise the bar in sustainable management of facilities and upon which we can build further. From our perspective, the standard goes beyond existing guidance on management of tailings facilities on the issues of meaningful engagement of project-affected people throughout the life cycle of the mine tailings facility. It requirements in the context of the management of the mine tailings facility. It establishes a governance mechanism for the management of tailings facilities, as well as identifying high-level responsibility for the implementation of the standard in communication with the board. and public disclosure and transparency of information mine facilities to stakeholders is a key component of the standard. It had high ambitions for the global industry standard. However, we see the standard as part of a number of interventions that can be pursued in parallel in partnership with ICMM, PRI, civil society, and others. Moving ahead towards implementation of the standard and further raising ambition towards zero harm to people and the environment, we are encouraged by ICMM's role and commitment to the standard and call on other mining companies and those that finance and invest in this industry to make similar commitments. UNEP will continue to be engaged in its rollout. Maintain the integrity of it's crucial that a non-organization identify and cost-effective implementation model, such as an independent, have asked UNEP to have the standard reflected in the report on the mineral resource governance, United Nations Environmental Assembly in February of 2021. But also to align the industry standard with national standards, to reflect on approaches by which the standard start off and enhance through national legislation, but also to seek opportunities for green investment, as for example, alternative productive uses of tailings waste in order to reduce the number of dams that we have. We will therefore continue to promote this highly ambitious agenda work towards zero harm to people and the environment. To support governments that wish to incorporate it into their national or state legislation and policy. We are ready to work with governments and other stakeholders who wish to engage on these critical issues, which ultimately were not included in the standard or were included with a lower level of ambition, to ensure that we together achieve zero harm to people and the environment from tailings management. Thank you very much for giving me this time. Antonia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Licia. So let's turn to PRI now. Now I'll hand over the floor to Adam Matthews. Adam, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today for a hugely important presentation of the standard. I'd also like to reiterate, as one of the co-conveners for PRI with John Houchin, our thanks to Professor Oberle, the independent chair, the advisory committee, and the expert group that really has sort of guided this process. It's been a very innovative process, and it's one where we can see the results of it today. So Brumadinho and Mariana disasters should never have happened, but they did. They did because for too long, the waste from mining has been treated as an externality, something to be managed as cheaply as possible. Results, a legacy of tailings dams, a number of which we don't know how many, and an approach that has contributed to these two disasters. Good practice does exist, and individual companies are committed to an industry-wide systemic issue of waste that needs a global response. John and I pay tribute to enormous dignity.
Adam, you're breaking up. Hello, Adam.
Of those members
Adam, oi.
Who have met with us.
Adam,
and
sorry.
Have been facilitated.
Adam, sorry, you were breaking up. May I suggest you switch off your video perhaps, because if you could repeat the last few sentences.
Just drop the video. Drop the video.
Adam, can you hear us?
Antonio, can you hear me?
You were breaking up for the past 2 minutes.
Antonio.
Hi. Hi. May I suggest I pass to John first, and then we'll come back to you, please. And if you could switch off your video, perhaps that will hopefully help. We apologize, everyone. Internet is not on our side today. John, over to you.
So, thank you very much, Antonia, and thank you everyone for joining today. It's much appreciated, and thank you once again, Angelica, for your stark reminder of why we're here. I know this is a very personal endeavor for you, but thank you for joining us and taking your time. So Adam was saying, I think from the institutional investor side, this has been a wake-up call that we need to touch base with reality. We cover a lot of companies within the institutional investment side, but we need to get closer to the underlying issues. And this externality that tailings dams has been now needs to be addressed. And the global tailings review and the standard coming out of this process, together with our great co-conveners, is a very good starting point. It's not the end of the discussion, it's only the beginning of the discussion. Tailings is a very serious issue for the mining industry. It's as simple as that. We're getting too much tailings, trying to get the minerals that we need. And especially now that we're moving into a low carbon economy and we're going to need very special minerals to this, there's going to be more mine waste coming out. So we need to mine smarter and we need to become much more efficient. Having said that, we have a huge legacy with all these tailings dams. And with this process that we've started now with the Global Tailings Review, with UNEP, with the institutional investors and everyone, we're asking all the mining companies to take a second, third, and fourth look at all their tailings dams. And we need to get a better understanding if there are any security risks within any of these tailings dams. So this is an opportunity, but it's also sort of a final request. You can't come to us after this process and say, we didn't know, we were not aware of the risks. This is the time you check and double check and triple check if you have any risks in your operations or close vicinity of your operations. So the Global Tailings Review and the standard will be used for that. And we are going to ask all the listed mining companies in the world to implement this process. Having said that, and having ICMM at the table, we know that there's also going to be a number of practical documents coming out of ICMM to help this in an efficient manner. It needs to be an efficient process, and companies need help to implement this. Finally, and I'm not sure Adam is with us yet, the ambition with this is also that we are going to be able to educate a global group of young, hungry engineers that can travel around the world to check that these safety standards are indeed a global standard and are implemented in a straightforward way so we can avoid another Brumadinho and save lives.
Thank you very much, John. I see we have Adam back on. Hi, Adam, can you hear us?
Hi, Antonia. Hopefully you can hear me better. I'll keep the video
Yes,
off.
luckily, yes. I think that'll be best. Over
Okay.
to you.
So just to reiterate, really just to thank the members of the community that John and I have had the opportunity to engage with. We acknowledge the role that the Business and Human Rights Resource Centre in Caritas Brazil have played in facilitating the contributions they've made to us over the past 18 months. And the point and the voice that we have in our mind is really that we as investors have to do all we can to support and ensure that this issue is addressed and that we achieve a mining industry where there is zero harm to people and the environment. As investors representing PRI, some 90 trillion in assets, we know we have a responsibility to play our part in ensuring that we do all that we can. That's why the standard and today is so important. Not because it is job done, but because together with the United Nations Environment Programme and ICMM, we've put in place the first global industry standard on tailings. A standard where one did not exist before, globally and comprehensive. A standard that will now be required by investors of companies in which they're invested. A standard that will be supported and driven by investors through company disclosures and reporting. And a standard that will be the basis for continued and further efforts by investors working together with banks and insurers to ensure that Brumadinho is an event that doesn't happen again. But let's be clear, we are all intimately linked to mining. Modern life, the low carbon transition demands the resources for mining. Waste is projected to grow by 25% just from the 100 companies that the investors in the Mining and Tailings Safety Initiative have been engaging with. This is a huge amount and it's not sustainable. Therefore, partnerships like those today of companies from ICMM, working together with the United Nations and investors and other stakeholders will be essential if we're to really address this. For our part as the PRI, as co-conveners, we're not finished, and we'll support an independent institution to drive the standard and to ensure that it will continue to evolve and support its independent implementation. We intend to work with progressive companies and others to ensure that this issue is fully resolved. And really just to end by saying to Angelica, to the other community representatives that have participated in today's call and I know are online, that we really do remain very much informed by your perspectives. This is a moment that we have to change the industry and there's opportunity to do so. And we think this is a very important step in that direction and there's more work to be done and we're committed to do our part.
Thank you, Adam. And we'll now turn to ICMM. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Antonia, and good day to everyone who's online. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank Angelica for recounting her experience of what was an unimaginable tragedy and to express my own condolences to Angelica for her loss. That tragedy is of course, the reason that we're here today, and it's why ICMM and our members, the co-conveners Bruno, and of course the expert panel, have worked tirelessly to enhance the safety of tailings facilities across the globe. Brumadinho was a pivotal moment for our sector. Following as it did so soon after Samarco, questions were rightly raised from all quarters about the mining industry's ability to manage tailings facilities safely, and we were criticised for a lack of transparency and disclosure about them. Our member CEOs agreed that a robust response was needed, and they committed to an independent multi-stakeholder approach that would draw on the global expertise of a diverse team and be informed by a wide range of stakeholders. Today, we have the result of that commitment, a standard that sets a new global benchmark to achieve strong social, environmental and technical outcomes in tailings facility management, with, as Bruno mentioned in his opening presentation, a strong emphasis on disclosure. Reaching this milestone has taken a huge amount of effort on all sides. Multi-stakeholder processes are not straightforward, and this process was no exception, given the wide range of views from communities, civil society, industry, and investors. But the final product is far more impactful as a result of the multi-stakeholder model. And I and my team and all of the ICMM members who worked on it can, I believe, be justifiably proud of what we've achieved. Now, ICMM members' immediate priority is on ensuring the implementation of the standard. The standard will be integrated into our existing membership commitments, which include third-party assurance and validation. Members have committed that all facilities with extreme or very high potential consequences will be in conformance with the standard within 3 years from today, and all other sites within 5 years. In practical terms, this commitment from ICMM members will apply to approximately 1,200 tailings dams operated by our members globally. Our members represent, as Ligia mentioned, about a third of the industry, and therefore, through effective implementation of the standard, ICMM members will help set the bar for all mining companies to work together to make tailings facilities safer. To support implementation of the standard, we are developing detailed guidance focused on fostering a safety culture for the management of tailings facilities. We are taking into account the improved engineering practices for tailings management, including use of a performance-based, risk-informed approach, as advocated by Dr. Norbert Morgenstern, who is a world-leading expert in this field, and who is actively engaged in the development of the guidance. Once it is ready, we hope by year end, it will be publicly available on our website for the benefit of all. I'd like to conclude by again thanking everyone who made the development of this critical process possible. The expert panel, the advisory group members, especially the co-conveners who made the leap of faith with us to embark on this journey, and of course to Bruno, who has chaired it so skillfully. It is largely a testament to his hard work, dedication and considerable diplomatic skills that we have a final standard that has been endorsed by all three co-conveners. As I said, we are very proud of what's been achieved. I also believe that this unique multi-stakeholder approach is one that we can learn from and that could in future be applied to address other issues, whether in our sector or in other sectors. Now that this vital first step has been completed, we must now focus on broad uptake and effective implementation of the standard to ensure safer management of tailings storage facilities everywhere and to prevent their catastrophic failure. Thank you very much. Back to you, Antonia.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you very much all. We will now turn to questions from our audience. We've already received quite a few, and we have 14 minutes to answer to as many questions as possible. Bruno, I'll pose a question to you, which is related to the process. What caused the delay of the standard? Some of our stakeholders are noting that we were due to submit it earlier this year. Could you please explain for our audience?
Yes, we decided from the beginning that we wanted to be very, very quick with this process. We maybe were a bit too optimistic with the objective to finalize so quickly at the end of last year. We had, in integrating all the feedbacks of the public consultation, we had much more to work than we have thought at the beginning. And then, of course, pandemic came in and stopped largely the in-person discussion and the meeting of the stakeholders inside the three co-conveners, so that we had to wait for to reshape the decision lines in a virtual mode to take the final steps among the co-conveners. So basically, very optimistic at the beginning. Difficult uptake of the consultation, of the result of the consultation process, and Corona. But I have to say, I know other standard processes that want to create a standard, and 1 year and almost 6 months is still a very, very quick process.
Thank you, Bruno. We've received quite a few questions related to the different types of tailings facility constructions. Some stakeholders have called for a ban on upstream tailings facilities. Bruno, this one is for you as well. Did the standard consider banning a certain type of tailings facility construction? And if not, why not?
As everyone knows, I imagine, I'm not a technician of the dam construction. I understand the language, and therefore I will call for help, and I will ask Mr. Morgenstern to support me, and I will quote him in his D'Amelio lecture. He was telling at one moment, and I quote, "However, I side with a couple of persons and others that there is nothing wrong with upstream tailing dams, provided that the key principles are adhered to in the design, construction, and operation of such dams." So if some dam construction may be more challenging than others, some environmental situation may be more challenging than others. Steep landscapes, a lot of humidity, a lot of water flowing, but you can decide to construct the facilities in a way that you can tackle these different challenges. The standard proposed a number of layers of review, of check and counter-check, to make sure that all the needed attention, all the needed technology is deployed to make all type of facilities everywhere in the world, under whatever condition, safe.
Thank you, Bruno. We have quite a few questions related to implementation, so we'll go through some of them. The first one relates to implementation of the standard beyond ICMM membership. So I will pose this question to Adam or John. Perhaps Adam first and then John can add. So ICMM member companies have committed to bringing their dams in line with the standard within 3 or 5 years, depending on the dam's consequence classification. But what about companies that aren't ICMM members? Do they have any reason to comply with the standard? Will there be any consequences for non-compliance?
Thanks, Antonia. Well, absolutely spot on question. We want to see every company that has a tailings facility adopt the standards. And as investors, we are invested in them. We provide their debt, and equally, we're working with both the banking and insurance sector to reinforce this standard. I think if you have tailings facilities and you're a company, please expect to hear from investors. We're already in touch with over 100 that have responded to the investor disclosure request that has been made and has given us an insight on which companies have which tailing facilities, and we have disclosed that in a global tailings portal. We're absolutely committed as PRI to now develop a investor expectation of companies in which we're invested. We'll be looking to reinforce the standard through the tools of stewardship that are available to us as investors. We will be contacting companies directly. We're absolutely encouraged by ICMM's leadership in terms of their members already committing to this, but this standard will work if the whole sector takes it up, and we want to see that go beyond the ICMM membership. So we will be using the opportunities that we have as investors to be in contact with companies. And I think those that don't take the standard up will present a very clear risk to investors. Why should we want to continue to remain invested in companies that are not taking on this standard? I think that will be a question that many investors will ask, and I expect that there'll be a lot of response from companies to that. We see there'll be a period of uptake in how this is now being published today. It takes some time to socialise and understand and to implement, and a key part of that will also be having an independent institute. We think that the recommendation from the chair on that is really important, and we're committed to work to see that established, because we feel that that will help ensure that the standard is fully implemented and evolved. John, do you want to add anything?
No, and to your point, and as I said previously, I think now is the time to dig into this, and there will be no excuses if there is another accident, especially within the listed mining community, where we can say we have some sort of responsibility. And we contacted, I think, approximately 600 mining companies in our initial reach, and we will contact them again to see whether they're planning to implement this standard. And obviously there'll be economy of scale, and there'll be a lot of efficiency when we get all the tools put down by ICMM and the bigger mining companies. So saying that there's no funds or it's going to be expensive to implement for even smaller mining companies will probably be a very bad excuse going forward. So that's at least the long-term ambition with this.
Great, thank you, John and Adam. The next question again relates to implementation and compliance, but this one is for ICMM. So Tom, if an ICMM member is found not to be compliant with the standard, what will the consequences be, and will the company be removed from the ICMM membership? You're on mute. You're on mute, Tom, sorry.
Sorry, I know I keep doing that even 4 months into this thing. So first of all, I think the key to the answer here is the requirements for disclosure and transparency that are in the standard. The standard is clear about what is required. It's also clear about what must be disclosed as evidence that the standard is being met. The disclosure requirements mean that it will be obvious if a company is not compliant to all stakeholders, as I think Adam has just implied. Our existing assurance and validation procedure requires companies to explain what they're doing to remedy non-compliance, and everyone would be able to see that as well, because that's part of the disclosure under our existing procedure. So just to, I think, to say that because of all that disclosure, companies will have a very strong incentive to fix non-compliance. Ultimately, ICMM is a voluntary organisation, not a regulator. But ultimately, if a member is consistently not complying or bringing ICMM into disrepute, there are mechanisms that exist within the ICMM Articles of Association for expulsion.
Great, thank you. The next question is Tom, I believe for you as well, but then perhaps we'll open the floor for others to add. What is the initial feedback from the mining companies on the standard? Did they participate in the development of the standard, and are they willing to make this standard their standard?
Okay, so I assume that the question applies to the ICMM members, and I think it's fair to say that they were very closely engaged in the process. And in fact, the way the process worked was we had the three co-conveners at the table, obviously, but behind each co-convener there were constituencies that the co-conveners were reporting back to. So in Adam and John's case, they were conferring and referring back to the investor constituency, and in our case, we were obviously referring back very closely to the member companies, who all assigned not only tailings experts to engage in the work, but also a number of CEOs were engaged very closely in the work. So as a result of that process and engagement from our own membership, I think there's very strong understanding within ICMM as to what the standard implies, the implications of the standard, and the members have been through the standard in great detail, and that means that when we're committing, as we are today, to implementing within 3 years for higher consequence facilities and 5 for the rest, that there's a clear understanding of what that commitment means. And I should say we've built a little bit of conservatism into that deadline, just because we're in the middle of a pandemic and we don't know how long that's going to continue to play out. So hopefully, depending on how the pandemic plays out, this could go a little bit faster.
Thank you, Tom. Bruno, perhaps you may want to elaborate a little bit on this point as well, with regard to the consultation process and our engagements with mining companies beyond ICMM membership.
Yes, we have, the consultation was on 2 tracks. During 2 months, we had on one side a virtual consultation over the web, where whoever wanted could answer the question that the site was asking. At the same time, experts and myself were traveling in the different mining zone of the world to meet the different constituencies, to meet local communities, to meet regulators, to meet companies, to meet academicians that are working in this field. We were in Ghana, we were in South Africa, we were in Kazakhstan, we were in China, we were in Chile, of course in Brazil and Canada at the very beginning of the consultation, maybe in the couple of places more that I don't remember just now. And at all these places in Australia, Western and Eastern Australia, we have engaged, among others, with a representative of the local mining companies, and or with the local association of the mining industry in that country. This was, of course, a very enriching process, not only the meeting with the industry, but all these meetings, and they have helped a lot to develop the first draft to the current state of the standard.
Thank you, Bruno. The next question is for UNEP. Lygia, I hope you can hear us, but if not, I see we also have Elisa Tonda. Hi, Elisa. So we have a question for you. How will this process and the standard be socialized with regulators and governments, and how is it expected that they will introduce the new aspects that the standard may introduce? So how will the standard be socialized with regulators?
Yeah, thanks very much, Antonia. If I drop off, Elisa will step in, as you've already noted. Indeed, we've already connected with governments and regulators, but not in any kind of detail. We have been in touch with them through our Committee of Permanent Representatives in Nairobi, and we have a huge interest in this standard by governments. As I mentioned in my earlier statement, that governments have actually asked us to make sure that this is part of the report to the next United Nations Environmental Assembly in February, where the governments have asked the executive director of UNEP to come up with a clearer understanding of what are the good practices that need to, as well as other aspects of mining, and to bring together certain important ideas on improved governance initiatives. So we believe that this could very much help us to help those governments that are interested in building upon the standard or strengthening it wherever it has perhaps less ambition, but making sure that the regulatory oversight and the commitments of industry are in the right step. So we think that there's a great opportunity here to strengthen very much regulatory oversight. For example, even the question of upstream dams, it is something that governments could also decide what they want to do with that. I will pause here. Thanks.
Thank you, Lygia. The next question is for Adam or John, whoever wants to jump in. Perhaps Adam, I'll pass to you first. Does the standard make insurance a mandatory requirement for tailings facilities?
There's specific reference to desirability for insurance within the standard. I think it's worth going to the exact point on that, and Bruno, perhaps you can comment on the specifics on that. But clearly there aren't, I mean, we recognised that there aren't products necessarily out there at the moment that provide for the full array of facilities. So there is a desirability to have insurance, and there's an expectation that that will evolve rapidly, particularly when you will see this standard now being required by investors, and our expectation is that the insurance sector will be responsive to that. I think we need to acknowledge where we are today, and it's not something that can be fixed overnight, that there's a period of time to sort of jump from where we are today to a point where you can obviously see that, but there clearly is reference to the desirability of that.
Thanks, Adam. Bruno, would you like to add anything on this? You're on mute.
I only make reference to requirement 10.7 to look at on this issue.
Okay, thank you. So the next question relates to, it makes a point that tailings facilities last in perpetuity, and highlighting the issue of abandoned and legacy sites. So Bruno, I'll pose this question to you, and perhaps then we can pass over to UNEP as well to add. How as a society we can ensure that tailings facilities be safe and monitored as their ownership is changed over time or abandoned?
The standard requires the operator to prepare for all the life, to act for all the life cycle of the site, including the closure and post-closure phase. So the standard is demanding to take the adequate constructive and managerial measures to make sure that the closed site is safe. Of course, we have a big number of facilities out there that are already closed or abandoned, where the standard will not be applicable simply because there is no operator anymore. There is no more owner anymore. And this is indeed a problem that the standard will not solve and cannot solve, because the standard is addressing as an industrial standard, is addressing the owner and the operator of the facility. If the operator is no more existent or no more acting, then there is no leverage. And all these open problems will fall back to the states. So this is an issue that have to be solved in the future. I imagine this will be something that will be solved more from the side of the states regulations than from the operator side.
So I just want to add to this. I think something we haven't spoken about is the advancement of technology and satellite monitoring and piezometers. I think something we as long-term investors are looking at in regards to the process we're having right now is getting costs down on these technologies. They are available at already pretty reasonable costs, and getting piezometers and satellite monitoring over these, even the abandoned sites, will probably not be an issue going forward for states to finance that, and that's part of the ambition with the whole process that we're running. Secondly, together with the investor initiative that Adam and I have been driving, we've started a database with Grid Arendal. And I think the long-term objective with that database is actually to get every single tailing dam in the world into the system so we know where they're at, because currently we don't actually know where all the tailing dams are globally. So that will be part of the process, the long-term process, and that's together with UNEP as well. And we need to be ambitious on this because this is the time we address this topic.
Yeah, there's a legacy, absolutely. There's a legacy still to be addressed that the standard doesn't apply to, but that problem will not be added to by those operating to these standards. But there is still the requirement to address that legacy, and that's something that we're very conscious of and equally committed to play a role, I suspect, working very largely with governments, but also the remaining industry to see how we can find solutions to that.
Thank you. Just to double check, does Ligia, would you like to add anything on this point, or shall we move on?
Well, just to say that absolutely, yes, we would want very much to work on improved governance, regulatory governance on this issue of closure and post-closure. And this will also, of course, require some kind of thinking on financial issues, which you've already heard Adam speak to. And John mentioned the satellites and the new technologies that can, that this can be something and that can be very well integrated into the governance part of things, and therefore off the standard. So yes, this is something that needs to be taken forward at the later life of the mine. With regard to mergers and acquisitions and looking at ways in which the responsibility is carried on, again, one can strengthen that through working with governments on this. So we stand ready to work with governments on this as and when required.
Thank you, Ligia. The next question.
Over, Antonia.
Thank you. The next question has been posed to Bruno, and I will do so as the question has been posed, but I would then like to open the floor to the co-conveners to add their thoughts as well. So Bruno, can you comment on the long-term plans of the standard in terms of implementation, but also ensuring that it remains up to date?
Yes, I can answer, and I will separate my answer in two parts. The first one, it is the short term, and the other one, it is the long term. In the short term, we have already heard what the different co-conveners will make. ICMM companies will work from now on their own structures and facilities to make sure that in a couple of years this problem there are under control. The investor will ask, and I hope urgently ask, the investee to stick with the objective and with the instrument of the standard. And on the side of UNEP, more the public space, it can be fed into global discussion and or in specific country to reflect about uptake in the global or local legislation. So this is what it can be done in the short term, and I am very optimistic that this will happen. In a longer term, of course, a number of problems will pop up. One problem that it is easy to foresee. It is that with the evolution of the legislation, of the technology, of the socio-economical condition, the standard will need to be developed to stay always at the top of the development. On the other side, we will probably see that if the way to use the standard will be left with the different companies that will work with the standard, differences will come up in the way in which in different part of the world or in different companies, the different requirements are interpreted. And this, of course, to the detriment to the one companies that use in a sound, strict sense the standard. I imagine that at one moment it will be the need for an independent entity. I don't know what type of where hosted that will take over the let's say the daily brushing of the standard and the discussion with the implementers, with the implementing operator, to guarantee that the standard will be sound in the long term. We have heard before from the co-conveners that there is an intention to discuss on this important issue, and I'm really hoping that this will lead to positive results, because this will guarantee the long-term validity of this important instrument.
Thank you, Bruno. Would any of the co-conveners would like to add anything on the longer term ambition?
Hi, it's Adam here. I perhaps jump in first. Just to say that Bruno's right to sort of split between the immediate and then the sort of the next phase of how do you sort of institutionalize this beyond the sort of first take up. And clearly we as investors are very keen to see this standard evolve. It has created that baseline. It is now going to become an expectation from those companies within which we're invested. And clearly, as we all acknowledge, standards evolve over time, and they need to. But the point is, you have to start somewhere, and we have today, and we will see that we'll need to see that evolution done in a responsible way, and something that can be responsive to technology change as well. So our hope and call very clearly is, as one of the co-conveners, that we want to see an independent entity that can advance that, and will now be beginning discussions on how to establish that, working I expect very much with governments and with companies that are supportive of that, and we would see that really being the custodian of being able to evolve this standard as we move forward over the sort of medium to longer term, and we think that's a critical part of the long term implementation.
Thank you, Adam. UNEP or ICMM would like to add anything? Tom?
Just I mean, in the short term and perhaps even the medium term, our priority as a membership is obviously, as I've said, implementation. This is not something. Implementation of a standard like this does not happen overnight. It's going to take some time to do it, and it involves a lot of human resources and feet on the ground. What's important to us actually as part of that is, as a membership, is predictability and certainty of having a process in place and a standard that everyone is aiming for. So I think we have to try and test it, and as Bruno said, maybe in the longer term we'll learn lessons and others will learn lessons. But the first step and priority for us is to get into conformance. That being said, as Adam and Ligia have both indicated, they want to initiate work to establish an independent entity, and Ligia has also emphasised that it's crucial that this should be led by a non-industry organisation as it goes ahead. But you know, as an initiative like that does go ahead, we'll be prepared to engage in good faith to explain our own processes and to make sure that our views are represented, and to engage in any discussion related to setting up such an entity, which allows us to share our concerns and questions and potentially ultimately changes to the standard as well, if that's what an independent entity ends up deciding it needs to do. But you know, just to be clear, what we're committing to do right now is to implement the standard as it stands, and that's going to take some time.
Thank you, Tom. Anything to add, Ligia?
Antonia, most of it is covered, but just to
Sure.
say that the implementation of the standard has to go beyond ICMM members. It's very important that we have some kind of uniformity of the compliance and the conformity that we want to look at. And so it becomes very important for us to have this kind of an independent entity to be able to support the uptake of members of the industry who are not part of ICMM. But also including the ICMM members as the entity develops. So yes, we are very supportive of the idea of an independent entity, and we look to see how, and there are examples, the cyanide code, for example, is an example of such an independent certification process that can be taken up. So we do believe that this is a way forward if we really want to make this a must for all members of the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ligia. The next question is for PRI, so Adam or John. How much patience will the investors have with mining companies? At what point will you divest from a company that has not disclosed information on its tailings facilities or that has not implemented the standard? Perhaps
John,
Adam,
do you want to go first?
Okay.
It's John's turn.
True, John.
Well, quite honestly, I mean, we do have patience. Let's be honest about that. We are long-term investors and we do engage with companies, but I think we've been very clear for some time now that this is a very important topic, and there's no excuses anymore for any mining company not to do this review and not to disclose data. So we will be very persistent, and I think the whole institutional investor society will be very persistent on this topic, because it's very important. I mean, the mining industry is not your nice-to-have industry. It's a basic fundamental industry for society. And it's a very important long-term industry. And simply, it can ill afford another accident. We can't have any more Brumadinhos or Mariana. There's no excuse now. So based on that, I think, and I also think for the institutional investment group, the PRI and all its participants, this is the time we step up in a serious way to put pressure onto this. So we're going to be there and we're going to be at the table.
Thank you very much, John. Adam, I see you nodding.
I think so. I'm just nodding in agreement with John.
Perfect. The next question actually relates back to the speech that Angelica so kindly shared with us, and it relates to potential conflicts of interest. So Bruno, I'll pose this one to you, as I know we've had a lot of discussions with the expert panel as well on this topic. So potential conflicts of interest exist with consultants who have the necessary skills, having gained them through working for mining companies. How can we be assured of independence of audits and also independent engineers of record?
There is basically two ways to to act on the conflict of interest. Conflicts of interest are real because if you are in a position at one moment, you tend to identify with the firm that gives you this task, and you tend to want to continue working there. So there are basically one way, it is to limit the amount of time that you can stay in a specific position. And these, there are several ways to do it. not more than 2 contracts, not more than a number of years. And the second way to engage with this conflict of interest is transparency. It is opening up this reporting to different layer of control, to second eyes, and both approaches at different places in the standard are used. I will not go into the detail, because if not, it will be very nitty-gritty in the different requirements. But this approach, the problem is recognized, it is dealt with, and we use both instruments to make sure that this problem is reflected.
Thank you, Bruno. And one last question before we move on to concluding remarks. This one is for UNEP. How does the standard address the concept of free and prior informed consent, also known as FPIC, and as well as human rights and community protection more generally? Perhaps I can pass over to Elisa or Lygia if we still have her.
Elisa will take this question. I will, if she's there. Elisa?
Yes, I am. I am online, and I'm happy to take the question and reflect that the standard indeed had several provisions that speak to affected communities, to human rights, to free, prior, and informed consent, and a strong focus on environment protection as well. First provision is really the ultimate goal of the standard of zero harm to people and the environment, and of zero tolerance for human fatality. The standard indeed requires operators to take responsibility and prioritize the safety of tailing facilities throughout all phases of their life cycles, including closure and post-closures. And as reflected in some of the earlier intervention, it speaks to disclosure of information to enhance public accountability. On the environment front, a lot of attention has also been given to climate change and the evolving implications of climate change, and the creation within the knowledge base of climate change knowledge, which needs to be integrated in the management of tailing facilities, again, across the entire life cycle, and to be taken on board in accordance to the principles of adaptive management. For existing facilities, this translates into a requirement of periodically review, refine, and revise technology, design, and management strategies to internalize risk and to improve environmental outcomes. For new facilities, these translates into using environmental and climate change knowledge base to plan and manage the tailing facilities throughout their life cycle. Strong attention has also been given to a human rights approach to tailing management, developed in accordance to the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. And the guiding principle makes clear that the responsibility requires the operators to put in place policies and due diligence processes to prevent and mitigate any adverse, actual, or potential human rights impact that they may cause, contribute to, or be linked through their business operation or relationships, products or services.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elisa.
No problem at all.
Thank you so much. Apologies, we have 2 minutes to wrap up, so I'll pass back to all the panelists for literally 2-sentence wrap-up sentence and call for action, please. Let's start with UNEP again. Lygia or Lisa, back to you. 1 or 2 sentences, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so we would just reiterate our call to all of industry to inspired by the leadership and commitment of ICMM, and then we would work with governments to strengthen this. That's our 1-point call of action.
Thank you, Lygia. Adam?
Just to say that Brumadinho is a disaster that should never have happened, and we don't want to see another Brumadinho. We need to hold that as guiding us and ensuring that as many people take this up, and investors are going to be absolutely playing their part to drive the standard to ensure that it's delivered, and really looking forward to the continued partnership with governments, with industry in driving that.
John, I'll skip you. Tom?
Just to say that it's, we shouldn't underestimate the degree of alignment and collaboration that has got us to this point. This is a major milestone, but we still have a lot of a long way to go. Looking forward to getting on with it.
Thank you. And Bruno?
It is time for action. We have thought, written, discussed, now the standards is on the table. I ask everyone to take the standard and implement it in the practice.
Thank you very much, all. Thank you very much to our guest speaker, Angelica, to our panelists, and to everyone who dialed in today. Just a reminder that the standard in 7 languages and all of our accompanying reports are now available on our website, so please be sure to download and review them. And a reminder also that the session will be recorded and uploaded on our website shortly after this event closes. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge that we have received many questions that we couldn't address today. And over the coming weeks, we will work through your questions and we'll be putting more information online together with our co-conveners. So once again, thank you very much to all of you for joining us. We had persistent more than 1,500 people on the call, plus minus a few hundred at times. So thank you very much again for your time and interest, and be sure to stay safe and well. Goodbye from us. Thank you.